Hello everyone, so this is an Ari, and just thought I'd do a quick video sort of going over the new cards that were revealed for the new expansion and sort of give my first impressions on them. Obviously, this is looking at them like in sort of a vacuum without any of the future releases for the expansion that are going to come, so there's definitely cards that will rely on synergies that become more apparent as more cards are revealed, so I'm probably going to get a few of these wrong, but first impressions. So firstly, if you haven't seen, this is for Way of the Witcher, which is the new expansion that's going to be coming middle of next month. And so we're in leak season now. We're going to be drip fed cards over the next few weeks, I reckon. So the two mechanics that have sort of been shown are counter, which is how many times something can happen. Literally say counter, like one of the new cards has counter 3, so it can happen 3 times. And the other one is adrenaline. So adrenaline will come with a number attached to it, similar to how you have, tribute or anything like that. And adrenaline is an effect that will only trigger when you have that amount of cards or less in your hand. So that will be like adrenaline 6, you have to have 6 or less cards in your hand for this ability to trigger. Some are attached to deploys, some are attached to like on-board effects. And there's not too much to say about the effect itself because it's more something that will limit when individual effects trigger. It's not like something like I don't know, like bleeding or vitality or something that does a specific thing. It's just what limits what can happen. I hope that made sense. Hearing myself say it didn't make sense, but I hope it's clear enough. So I'll get into the cards. So first one is one you can actually use now. You get it for free if you pre-order some kegs or anything like that. Or you can just craft it if you have the scraps. So that's Alza. So Alza is 6 power, 11 provisions. Whenever you play a spell, spawn a random unit with the same provision cost on this row. My first sort of thoughts on this are I'm concerned that like more RNG is coming into the game because of the variance that's involved with these random effects. I worry that it will sort of be the direction the creative teams go in, that it'll be more like Hearthstone where you just have a random effects everywhere and it moves away from player skill and decision making down to just random outcomes deciding games, which is really not what anyone really wants, I don't think. I'll probably have to try this before I can give like a solid view on it. I haven't tried it out yet. I have crafted it but just not played any games with it. But my first concern is obviously that there's a lot of variance. I don't mind too much if it's just a meme card that's like underpowered but does wild things. It's when it enters the meta that it's a little concerning. But also, like, on first impressions, I think this is probably, I think honestly like 4 stars. So my kind of reasoning for that is you've got your counter 3, 6 power is quite robust. It's not like small removal is going to get rid of this, not like you can just get like rebuked away or something like that. 6 is pretty solid, will usually stick for a turn without hard removal. And you can get a lot of value from this. Like, imagine an Aeromancy in the turn after you play Alza. Could get very, very ridiculous. So yeah, so the first Nilfgaard one is Viper Witcher, which is a 4 power, 5 provision card, which has deploy, put 2 bleeding on an enemy unit, and this is the first adrenaline one. So adrenaline 6, spawn a copy of that unit at the top of opponent's deck. So this kind of almost feels like they're teasing the fact that they want to look at like a stacking your opponent's deck archetype. Now, initially looking at it, 4 power, give 2 bleeding for 5 provisions is just god awful, like absolutely terrible. Yeah, I don't think I have much more to say about like that section of it. That's just terrible in terms of like temper and just raw points for provisions. That's really bad. The adrenaline tag part of like spawning in your opponent's deck, I think I would definitely need to see more cards that would be supporting this archetype before I could say this would be any good. I think this would only see play if that is an archetype. So I think I'd like hesitantly give this like a 2-star, because I would rate it higher if there's an archetype supporting this. But based on what we know at the moment, and based on the next card that I had a look at, I can't see it getting too much play. So we've got Colgrim, which is the first gold Nilfgaard card we'll look at, which is 1 power, 9 provisions, and Adrenaline 2. At the end of your turn, boost self by the difference between number of cards in players' decks. So this can kind of work two ways. It would obviously work in a deck where you're stacking your opponent's deck with useless stuff, which Viper Witch suggests. And it would also work in a mill deck where you remove all your opponent's cards. It's about the difference. It's not, say, how many more cards you have or how many more cards your opponent has. It's just the difference. My initial kind of thought with this was this would be really good in Hyper Thin. But then the drawback of that is, do you really want a 1 power card in Hyper Thin? I'm not too sure you do. Just because of how it would mess with Triss and Yen, like you're looking for those tall units. But honestly, I'm giving this like a 1-star, like the first 1-star, because my initial thought is like the only way where this would be like somewhat acceptable would be if it's ending up as a 9 for 9. And then I'd be okay, 9 for 9, whatever. Seems okay. But the amount that you have to get out of your opponent, or rather place in your opponent's deck, the amount of setup you have to do just to get a 9 for 9 is kind of ridiculous. You'd have to get 8 difference in cards, which is a lot to get done. And when you consider that there's not many decks out there that aren't using tutors to sort of thin the deck, or like thinning cards now are more prevalent, so things like Wild Hunt Riders and like Mahakam Volunteers are like staples in their respective factions. So I'd be surprised to see this get too much play. But again, we'll have to see. But I think 1-star. I think even in the archetype, I can't see it being too good. So then we're on to Northern Realms. So we have Cohen, the only Northern Realms card revealed, which is 3 power, 7 provisions, Zeal, with order, boost all units with power equal to Cohen's power by the amount Cohen is boosted. So this straight away jumped out as me as, with Visor, this would be pretty insane. What we're kind of looking at here is, even if you have another unit of the same power as Cohen, literally just one more unit, you're doubling the value of boosts. And that's already pretty insane if you consider like the Trident Infantry and Visor combo of like the machine gun basically. That's already valued really highly, and that's basically getting 2 points for each 1 boost. Cohen facilitates you to get 3 times, 4 times, 5 times the amount of boost, which could be very, very good, especially when you consider how Shield Wall is already very strong. I think it would slip straight in. It's 7 provisions, so it's not like ridiculously expensive. It can get pulled by Amphibious Assault, so it can come down with 2 points of boost on it from Amphibious Assault and then boost all your 5s. So yeah, I can definitely see this fitting straight into the current Shield Wall deck. So I think I'd give this a 4 out of 5, 4 stars, because it seems very good. I think obviously the drawback would be it's very brickable. This could come down in like a short round, for example, as literally just 3 points. And 3 points for 7, not very good. So yeah, there's definitely that high risk, high reward with this kind of card, much like Visor, for example. So then for scoia'tael, again, only 1 card. We've got Breton. So he's 4 power, 8 provisions, destroy the rightmost unit on your opponent's row with 5 units. Adrenaline 3, destroy the rightmost with 3 units instead. This is kind of the thing I've been asking for. So if you can see me on stream, I'm always kind of saying that I wish there were more cards that sort of impacted or like made you think about where you position your cards. There's already kind of stuff for like row placement, so whether you put it on front or back row, but not so much in terms of like where you place it, like left or right. And I'm really bad for this. I just end up dropping cards down willy-nilly most of the time. Obviously cards like Frigate and Foulblood Totem work in this kind of way where you have to think about where you're placing your cards, but there's not huge amounts in terms of like right or left placement. So I'm happy to see something like this. I think the adrenaline tag doesn't change my views on it all that much. It just feels a little weird. It almost feels like it should be the other way around, but yeah, I don't know. It is like hard removal for 8 provisions, 4 power. You don't have to kill something too huge to get value, so I think it's not too bad. The only problem being obviously it's brickable, which, like I said, with Cohen isn't great. If this is a 4 for 8, it's not that great. So I think I'd give this 3 stars. Like it seems okay. It's hard removal, which is nice, but yeah, I think as people adapt and start to think about row placement, you're going to lose a little bit of value, especially when you consider things like Nature's Gift and like spawned units appear on the right hand side. So token units like 1 power and 2 power typically end up on the right hand side, so that could kind of get damaged by things like that. So yeah, we'll just have to see with that one. So then for Skellige, we've got 2 cards. We've got Bear Witcher Mentor, which is 4 power, 1 armor, 5 provisions, boosts self by 1 for every damaged ally unit, or Adrenaline 3 boosts self by 1 for every damaged unit, so that would include your opponents. And I really like this. I think this looks very, very strong, because I'm sure I don't have to tell you about how it feels playing against Patricidal Fury. It seems everything ends up damaged, and so if you consider that comboing with Patricidal Fury, for example, you literally just play your leader, and on a completely vacuum board just involving the leader, this would be 7 for 5, which is pretty good. And when you consider that Skellige has plenty of tools for setting up damaged units, and it's what they're kind of playing to do, you usually end up with damaged units yourself, all that sort of stuff. I can see this being very, very strong. I think this would be auto-include in sort of mid-range decks as like a finisher kind of card. So honestly, 5 stars for me. Straight away. I think the only thing letting it down is the Witcher tag, but it's a Witcher expansion. Like if this had Warrior tag, this would be like 6 stars. Seems absolutely ridiculous, because it's not even like an engine that you need to leave going with like Bloodthirst and let it tick up. It's just going to drop down huge. So yeah, I think this looks very, very good. So next we have Gerd, which is 8 power, 7 provisions, spawn a Deafening Siren on the opposite row, damage all units on that row by 1, and Adrenaline 4, spawn a Deafening Siren and damage the Siren by 1. So if you don't know, Deafening Siren is 2 power beast, which will end up being 1 power damage, same as what Arnov the Patricide spawns from Patricidal Fury. There's 2 power units that get damaged by 1, same effect. Now, I really like what they've done here. So the Adrenaline tag basically means that you can't hold Gerd to be a finisher, much like you would something like Hemdall, having an effect very similar to Hemdall, but you can't sort of use it as a finisher. I think it's really, really good. I really like the design, but I think honestly this is like 4 stars for me. It's got a similar effect to like how Teruvial works, for example, but is higher power, 1 less provisions. I think Teruvial's 8 if I remember right. And obviously the synergy with damaged units for Skellige means that damaging units by sort of small increments, damaging all units by small increments is really, really good. Yeah, so I can definitely see this being played. I think it fits straight into what Skellige is trying to do. My only worry would be the obvious adrenaline drawback means that you need to play it within your first 6 cards. So there's definitely going to be matchups where you get no value out of this, but then it still comes down as a 7 for 7, so it's not the end of the world. But yeah, I think 4 stars, like leaning 4.5 stars. It seems pretty good though. Pretty good. So then we'll be rounding out with Syndicate. We got 2 Syndicate cards. We have Salamandra Abomination, which is 5 power for 5. Tribute 1 is poison itself. Whenever it's poisoned, boosts off by 2. And Adrenaline 4 is at the end of your turn, purify itself. So this obviously feels much like I said with the Nilfgaard thing, like the sort of hinting at an archetype, which would be the self-poisoning for buffs, for coins, whatever. And I think I feel sort of similar to how I felt about Viper Witcher. I would need to see the other cards that are coming to support this archetype before I could give like a solid opinion on it. I think a 7 for 5 that you can play like later on in the game feels a little underwhelming. Also costs like 1 coin to benefit off that. Obviously it operates as like an engine where you can benefit from it, but I think we've kind of seen from the current cards we have that benefit from poisoning your own things that the only one that's really played is Fizztech Trafficker, and the only reason you play that is because it's a poison. But if you don't want to poison anything of your opponents, it's not a dead card. You can use it just to generate 3 coins and it's basically 6 points, not the end of the world. So yeah, it would depend on the support for the archetype, definitely. So I think honestly I'd give this like 2 stars, because I think even in a sort of archetype like that, I think it's still underwhelming slightly, because you're basically valuing poison at 2 points when just poisoning your opponent's stuff, normally poison is going to be valued at higher than 2 points. To value poison at 2 points, you would have to be happy with using 2 poisons to kill a 4 power unit, and I don't think anyone would feel too happy about using 2 poison charges to kill a 4 power unit. I think you'd only really feel good about it at like 6 power or higher, which would value poison at least 3 points. Yeah, I think somewhat underwhelmed. And then we have Roland Blindheim, which is the last card to look at. So that's 7 power for 7 provisions. Whenever a unit is poisoned, gain 2 coins. Adrenaline 5, whenever an allied unit is poisoned, gain 2 coins. So feel much the same as like I did with the Salamandra Abomination. I think if there's more support for the archetype and the archetype's good, then yeah, sure, probably okay. But I think current state, really not that good. And again, it's valuing poisons at 2 coins. There's obviously the bonus of before you have 5 cards left in your hand, so for the first half of a long round, of a 10 card round, you're getting extra bonus from poisoning your opponent's stuff, but typically you're not using your poisons that early in the round, because people tend to not play these huge units too early. You tend to hold your poisons back a little bit. So yeah, I think I'm a bit underwhelmed by both the Syndicate cards, really. I think this is another 2 stars, just because without seeing the sort of stuff that will support the archetype, I'm not too impressed, and I think even in an archetype it doesn't seem amazing. Alright, so cutting in here because as I was editing, I literally saw we've had some more cards released, so I'll talk about those quickly as well. So Pajabol has revealed Coated Weapons, which is a 5 provision tactic for Nilfgaard, which is damage an enemy unit by 5, and Deathblur, banish it and spawn a copy of it on top of your opponent's deck. So this is like what I was saying with Colgrim and Viper Witcher. This will depend on if the archetype is viable. At worst, it's like an Alza's Thunder, and again, it depends if the archetype works. I think this would be like a 3 stars in my eye, because not too much information to go on at the moment. The next one we have is Triangle Within a Triangle, which is a 9 provision spell, which is boost an ally by its provision cost or damage an enemy by its provision cost. Which I mean, my first impression is it feels like solid toll removal. I can definitely see it working, but I think there's already very good toll removal options. I think you why would you run this instead of like a heat wave or a curse of corruption or something like that? And of course, there's also toll units that this won't be too good against. So something like a god, for example, it's only dealing 7 damage to, but you play a curse of corruption, it just kills the whole thing. Now you can boost your allied units by it, so there's probably a synergy there for sort of playing tall units and boosting them based on that. But yeah, I'd have to see for that one. I think tentatively like a 3 stars, but I think there's better options for removal out there, and it feels too weird because we kind of saw with Vivian, the new Vivian, that not Vivian. I forget the name. Correct myself. I'll correct myself again. That boosting by provision cost really didn't have a huge payoff. And the final one is we have Witchers Saboteur, which is a scoia'tael card, which is 3 power, 5 provisions. Deploy moving enemy unit to the leftmost position on this row. Damage it for 1. Damage it by 1 for every card it passed. So very quickly, it's looking like scoia'tael's going to be working on the movement archetype, which will be interesting with guerrilla tactics being a thing. So yeah, I think support for that's nice to see. I think so to get like good value out of this, you probably have to move it maybe 4 spaces, maybe 5. So you need a relatively large row. I think if there's like more support for this movement archetype, it would be pretty good. But yeah, it seems a little underwhelming, like points wise. Probably like a 2 star in my eyes. It will obviously depend on the other cards. So that's definitely it. Like at the point of recording, that's all I've got. So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next.